A pysanka is a Ukrainian Easter egg, decorated with traditional Ukrainian folk designs using a wax-resist method. The word pysanka comes from the verb pysaty, to write, as the designs are not painted on, but written with beeswax. Many other Eastern European ethnic groups decorate eggs using wax-resist for Easter. These include the Belarusians, Bulgarians, Croats, Czechs, Hungarians, Lithuanians, Poles, Romanians, Serbs, Slovaks, Slovenes and Sorbs. Types of decorated Ukrainian eggs. Pysanka is often taken to mean any type of decorated egg, but it specifically refers to an egg created by the written wax batik method and utilizing traditional folk motifs and designs. Several other types of decorated eggs are seen in Ukrainian tradition, and these vary throughout the regions of Ukraine. Krashanki from Croats, to decorate, are boiled eggs dyed a single color, and are blessed and eaten at Easter. Pysanka from pysaty, to write, are raw eggs created with the wax-resist method. The designs are written in hot wax with a stylus or a pinhead. Wooden eggs and beaded eggs are often referred to as pysanki, because they mimic the decorative style of pysanki in a different medium. Krapanki from krapka are raw eggs decorated using the wax-resist method, but with only dots as ornamentation. They are traditionally created by dripping molten wax from a beeswax candle onto an egg. They can be considered the simplest version of a pysanka, or a proto-pysanka. Dry panki from dry putty, to scratch, are created by scratching the surface of a dyed egg to reveal the white shell below. Malyovanki from malyavati, to paint, are created by painting a design with a brush using oil or watercolor paints. It is sometimes used to refer to coloring on an egg. Naklyanki from kliati, to glue on, are created by gluing objects to the surface of an egg. Travlanki from travlinia, etching, are created by waxing eggs and then etching away the unwaxed areas. This is not a traditional Ukraine practice, but has become popularized recently. Bysurki from byza, beads, are created by coating an egg with beeswax, and then embedding beads into the wax to create geometric designs. Listovki from listut, leaves, are created by dyeing an egg to which small leaves have been attached. All but the krashanki and listovki are usually meant to be decorative, and the egg yolk and white are either allowed to dry up over time, or removed by blowing them out through a small hole in the egg. History. According to many scholars, the art of wax-resist egg decoration in Slavic cultures, and particularly in Ukraine, probably dates back to the pre-Christian era. They based this on the widespread nature of the practice, and pre-Christian nature of the symbols utilized. No ancient examples of intact pysanki exist, as the egg shells of domesticated fowl are fragile, but fragments of colored shells with wax-resist decoration on them were unearthed during the archaeological excavations in Ostrovec, Poland, where remnants of a Slavic settlement from the early Piast era were found. As in many ancient cultures, Ukrainians worshipped a sun god, Dajbor. The sun was important. It warmed the earth and thus was a source of all life. Eggs decorated with nature symbols became an integral part of spring rituals, serving as benevolent talismans. In pre-Christian times, Dajbor was one of the major deities in the Slavic pantheon. Birds were the sun god's chosen creations, for they were the only ones who could get near him. Humans could not catch the birds, but they did manage to obtain the eggs the birds laid. Thus, the eggs were magical objects, a source of life. The egg was also honored during rite of spring festivals. It represented the rebirth of the earth. The long, hard winter was over. The earth burst forth and was reborn just as the egg miraculously burst forth with life. The egg, therefore, was believed to have special powers. With the advent of Christianity, via a process of religious syncretism, the symbolism of the egg was changed changed to represent not nature's rebirth, but the rebirth of man. Christians embraced the egg symbol and likened it to the tomb from which Christ rose. With the acceptance of Christianity in 988, the decorated pysanka, in time, was adapted to play an important role in Ukrainian rituals of the new religion. Many symbols of the old sun worship survived and were adapted to represent Easter and Christ's resurrection. In modern times, the art of the pysanka was carried abroad by Ukrainian emigrants to North and South America, where the custom took hold, and concurrently banished in Ukraine by the Soviet regime, where it was nearly forgotten. Museum collections were destroyed both by war and by Soviet cadres. Since Ukrainian independence in 1991, there has been a rebirth of this folk art in its homeland, and a renewal of interest in the preservation of traditional designs and research into its symbolism and history. Archaeology. No actual pysanki have been found from Ukraine's prehistoric periods, as eggshells do not preserve well. Cultic ceramic eggs have been discovered in excavations near the village of Luka Vrublovetska during excavations of a Tripilian site. These eggs were ornamented and in the form of. Similarly, no actual pysanki from the Kievan Rus period exist, but stone, clay and bone versions do, and have been excavated in many sites throughout Ukraine. Most common of ceramic eggs decorated with a horsetail plant pattern in yellow and bright green against a dark background. More than 70 such eggs have been excavated throughout Ukraine, many of them from graves of children and adults. They are thought to be representations of real decorated eggs. These ceramic eggs were common in Kievan Rus, and had a characteristic style. They were slightly smaller than life-size, and were created from reddish-pink clays by the spiral method. The Majolika glazed eggs had a brown, green or yellow background, and showed interwoven yellow and green stripes. The eggs made in large cities like Kiev and Chernihiv, which had workshops that produced clay tile and bricks. These tiles were not only used locally, but were exported to Poland, and to several Scandinavian and Baltic countries. The oldest real pysanka was excavated in Lviv in 2013, and was found in a rainwater collection system that dates to the 15th or 16th century. The pysanka was written on a goose egg, which was discovered largely intact, and the design is that of a wave pattern. The second oldest known pysanka was excavated in Batran in 2008, and dates to the end of the 17th century. Batran was Hetman Mazeppa's capital, and it was razed in 1708 by the armies of Peter I. A complete pysanka was discovered, a chicken eggshell with geometric designs against a blue-gray background. The pysanka is currently being reconstructed. When completed, it will allow us to see what sort of ornamentation was in use in pre-1708 Ukraine. Legends. The Hutsuls Ukrainians who live in the Carpathian Mountains of western Ukraine believe that the fate of the world depends upon the pysanka. As long as the egg-decorating custom continues, the world will exist. If, for any reason, this custom is abandoned, evil in the shape of a horrible serpent who is forever chained to a cliff will overrun the world. Each year the serpent sends out his minions to see how many pysanki have been created. If the number is low, the serpent's chains are loosened and he is free to wander the earth, causing havoc and destruction. If, on the other hand, the number of pysanki has increased, the chains are tightened and good triumphs over evil for yet another year. Newer legends blended folklore and Christian beliefs and firmly attach the egg to the Easter celebration. One legend concerns the Virgin Mary. It tells of the time Mary gave eggs to the soldiers at the cross. She entreated them to be less cruel to her son, and she wept. The tears of Mary fell upon the eggs, spotting them with dots of brilliant color. Another legend tells of when Mary Magdalene went to the sepulchre to anoint the body of Jesus. She had with her a basket of eggs to serve as a repast. When she arrived at the sepulchre and uncovered the eggs, the pure white shells had miraculously taken on a rainbow of colors. A common legend tells of Simon the peddler, who helped Jesus carry his cross on the way to Calvary. He had left his goods at the side of the road, and, when he returned, the eggs had all turned into intricately decorated pysanky. Superstitions and folk beliefs. Many superstitions were attached to pysanky. Pysanky were thought to protect households from evil spirits, catastrophe, lightning and fires. Pysanky with spiral motifs were the most powerful, as the demons and other unholy creatures would be trapped within the spirals forever. A blessed pysanka could be used to find demons hidden in the dark corners of your house. Pysanky held powerful magic, and had to be disposed of properly, lest a witch get a hold of one. She could use the shell to gather dew, and use the gathered dew to dry up a cow's milk. The witch could also use bits of the egg shell to poke people and sicken them. The egg shell had to be ground up very finely or broken into pieces and tossed into a running stream. The cloth used to dry pysanky was powerful, too, and could be used to cure skin diseases. And it was considered very bad luck to trample on a pysanka. God would punish anyone who did, with a variety of illnesses. There were superstitions regarding the colors and designs on the pysanky. One old Ukrainian myth centered on the wisdom of giving older people gifts of pysanky with darker colors and/or rich designs. The life has already been filled. Similarly, it is appropriate to give young people pysanky with white as the predominant color because the life is still a blank page. Girls would often give pysanky to young men they fancied, and include heart motifs. It was said, though, that a girl should never give her boyfriend a pysanky that has no design on the top and bottom of the egg, as this might signify that the boyfriend would soon lose his hair. Making pysanky. Each region, each village, and almost every family in Ukraine had its own special ritual, its own symbols, meanings and secret formulas for dyeing eggs. These customs were preserved faithfully and passed down from mother to daughter through generations. The custom of decorating pysanky was observed with greatest care, and a pysanka, after receiving the Easter blessing, was held to have great powers as a talisman. Pysanky were traditionally made during the last week of Lent, Holy Week in the Orthodox and Greek Catholic calendars. They were made by the women of the family. During the middle of the Lenten season, women began putting aside eggs, those that were most perfectly shaped and smooth, and ideally, the first laid eggs of young hens. There had to be a rooster, as only fertilized eggs could be used. The dyes were prepared from dried plants, fruits, bark, berries and insects. Yellow was obtained from the flowers of the woadwaxen, and gold from onion skins. Red could be extracted from logwood de cochineal, and dark green and violet from the husks of sunflower seeds and the berries and bark of the elderberry bush. Black dye was made from walnut husks. The dyes were prepared in secret, using recipes handed down from mother to daughter. Sometimes chemical dyes were purchased from peddlers along with alum, a mordant that helped the natural dyes adhere better to eggshells. A stylus, known as a pysaty, pysaty, or kissed car, depending on region, was prepared. A piece of thin brass was wrapped around a needle, forming a hollow cone. This was attached to a small stick with wire or horsehair. In the Lemko regions, a simple pin and nail inserted onto the end of a stick was used instead. The pysanky were made at night, when the children were asleep. The women in the family gathered together, said the appropriate prayers, and went to work. It was done in secret. The patterns and color combinations were handed down from mother to daughter and carefully guarded. Pysanky were made using a wax-resist method. Beeswax was heated in a small bowl on the large family stove, and the styluses were dipped into it. The molten wax was applied to the white egg with a writing motion. Any bit of shell covered with wax would be sealed, and remain white. Then the egg was dyed yellow, and more wax applied, and then orange, red, purple, black. Bits of shell covered with wax remained that color. After the final color, usually red, brown or black, the wax was removed by heating the egg in the stove and gently wiping off the melted wax, or by briefly dipping the egg into boiling water. Boiled eggs were not used, as pysanky were generally written on raw or, less commonly, baked eggs. Boiled eggs were dyed red for Easter, using an onion skin dye and called krashanki. The number of colors on an egg was usually limited, as natural dyes had very long dyeing times, sometimes hours. Pysanky would be made and dyed in batches. Alternatively, in ethnic Lemko areas, a pinhead was dipped into molten wax and then applied to the shell of the egg. Simple drops were made, or there was an additional pulling motion, which would create teardrop or comma shapes. These drops were used to create patterns and designs. Dyeing and wax removal proceeded as with traditional pysanky. Pysanky continue to be made in modern times, while many traditional aspects have been preserved. New technologies are in evidence. Aniline dyes have largely replaced natural dyes. Styluses are now made with modern materials. Traditional styluses are still made from brass and wood, but those made with more modern plastic handles are gaining in popularity. An electric version of the stylus has been commercially available since the 1970s, with the can becoming a metal reservoir which keeps the melted beeswax at a constant temperature and holds a much larger amount than a traditional stylus. These newer styluses also sport machined heads, with sizes of the opening ranging from extra fine to extra heavy. Sharing pysanky. Pysanky are typically made to be given to family members and respected outsiders. To give a pysanka is to give a symbolic gift of life, which is why the egg must remain whole. Furthermore, the design, a combination of the motifs and colors on a traditional folk pysanka, has a deep, symbolic meaning. Traditionally, a pysanka given with its symbolic meaning in mind, be it wishes of protection, fecundity, or love. Typically, pysanky were displayed prominently in a public room of the house. In a large family, by Holy Thursday, 60 or more eggs would have been completed by the women of the house. The eggs would then be taken to the church on Easter Sunday to be blessed, after which they were given away. Here is a partial list of how the pysanky would be used. 1 or 2 would be given to the priest. 3 or 4 were taken to the cemetery and placed on graves of the family. 10 or 20 were given to children or godchildren. 10 or 12 were exchanged by the unmarried girls with the eligible men in the community. Several were saved to place in the coffin of loved ones who might die during the year. Several were saved to keep in the home for protection from fire, lightning and storms. 2 or 3 were placed in the mangers of cows and horses to ensure safe calving and colting and a good milk supply for the young. At least 1 egg was placed beneath the beehive to ensure good production of honey. 1 was saved for each grazing animal to be taken out to the fields with the shepherds in the spring. Several pysanky were placed in the nests of hens to encourage the laying of eggs. Everyone from the youngest to the oldest received a pysanka for Easter. Young people were given pysanky with bright designs. Dark pysanky were given to older people. A bowl full of pysanky was invariably kept in every home. It served not only as a colorful display, but also as protection from all dangers. Some of the eggs were emptied, and a bird's head made of wax and wings and tail feathers of folded paper were attached. These doves were suspended before icons in commemoration of the birth of Christ, when a dove came down from heaven and soared over the child Jesus.